When we think about major migrations that changed history, we often imagine Romans, Vikings, or medieval kingdoms. However, one of the most influential migrations in human history occurred thousands of years earlier. Around 5,000 years ago, groups of pastoralists from the Pontic-Caspian Steppe began expanding westward into Europe and eastward into Asia. These people are known today as the Yamnaya. Their movement transformed Europe genetically, culturally, technologically, and linguistically. Modern DNA research has revealed that much of European ancestry traces back to these ancient migrants. Their descendants carried not only genes but also new technologies, social structures, and languages that would ultimately evolve into most of the languages spoken across Europe today. This presentation explores who the Yamnaya were, where they came from, how they spread, and why their migration is considered one of the most significant events in human history. Before the Yamnaya arrived, Europe was already populated by several different groups. The earliest Europeans were hunter-gatherers who entered the continent after the Ice Age. Around 8,000 years ago, farming populations from Anatolia, in present-day Turkey, began spreading into Europe. These Neolithic farmers introduced agriculture, permanent settlements, domesticated animals, and new technologies. For thousands of years, Europe consisted primarily of mixtures between local hunter-gatherers and incoming farmers. Ancient DNA studies show that steppe ancestry was virtually absent from European populations during this period. Europe looked genetically and culturally very different from the Europe we know today. The Yamnaya culture emerged around 3300 BCE on the vast grasslands north of the Black and Caspian Seas. Their name comes from the Russian word yama, meaning pit, referring to their distinctive burial practices. The Yamnaya were pastoralists. Rather than living in permanent farming villages, they moved seasonally with livestock. They utilized wheeled vehicles and may have been among the earliest peoples to extensively exploit horse domestication. Their burial mounds, known as kurgans, remain visible across the Eurasian landscape today and have provided archaeologists with rich sources of information. For more than 200 years, scholars debated the origins of European languages and populations. Archaeologists, linguists, and historians proposed numerous theories, but direct evidence was lacking. Everything changed in the early 2010s when ancient DNA technology advanced dramatically. Scientists began extracting DNA from skeletons thousands of years old. These ancient genomes allowed researchers to compare prehistoric populations directly with living people. The results revealed a previously unknown migration event so massive that it fundamentally changed our understanding of European history. Around 3000 BCE, Yamnaya populations began moving into Europe on a large scale. This was not a small migration involving a few families. Genetic evidence indicates an enormous demographic expansion. Within a relatively short period, descendants of Yamnaya migrants appeared throughout Central and Northern Europe. The speed and scale of this movement were unprecedented for prehistoric Europe. Researchers often compare its genetic impact to that of major historical migrations such as the expansion of Europeans into the Americas. One of the most important archaeological cultures connected to the Yamnaya migration is the Corded Ware culture. Ancient DNA studies have shown that Corded Ware populations derived a substantial portion of their ancestry from Yamnaya-related groups. This culture spread across a vast region stretching from the Netherlands to Russia. The archaeological record shows dramatic shifts in burial practices, material culture, and social structures that coincide with the appearance of steppe ancestry. Corded Ware populations became major ancestors of many later European peoples. One of the most startling discoveries from ancient DNA studies was the scale of genetic replacement. In some regions, researchers found that over half of the genetic ancestry of populations changed within a few centuries. Y chromosome evidence indicates particularly dramatic shifts among male lineages. Today, significant portions of European ancestry derive from these Bronze Age migrations. This does not mean earlier populations disappeared entirely. Instead, Europe became a genetic mosaic combining hunter-gatherer, farmer, and steppe ancestries. One of the biggest questions in linguistics concerns the origin of Indo-European languages. These languages are spoken by nearly half the world's population today. Many researchers now believe the Yamnaya and related steppe populations were major carriers of Proto-Indo-European languages. As they expanded, their languages spread alongside their descendants. Over thousands of years, these languages evolved into the many branches we recognize today. While debate continues about details, ancient DNA has provided strong support for a significant connection between steppe migrations and language dispersal. The Yamnaya lived in an environment that rewarded mobility. Their use of wagons allowed families and possessions to travel across great distances. Horse domestication increased transportation efficiency and expanded communication networks. These innovations provided major advantages over less mobile farming communities. The combination of livestock management, mobility, and expanding social networks helped fuel their remarkable success. Genetic genealogists often encounter Y-DNA haplogroups associated with steppe populations. Two of the most important are R1a and R1b. These lineages expanded dramatically during and after the Yamnaya migrations. Today, they represent some of the most common paternal lineages across Europe. However, it is important to remember that carrying one of these haplogroups does not mean someone is directly descended from a Yamnaya individual in a simple sense. Thousands of generations and countless ancestral lines separate modern individuals from these ancient populations. Instead, these haplogroups provide evidence of broad population movements and demographic change. The Yamnaya story demonstrates how ancient DNA has revolutionized our understanding of history. For generations, scholars relied primarily on artifacts, language comparisons, and historical reconstruction. Today, genetics provides a new line of evidence that can confirm, challenge, or refine existing theories. The discovery of large-scale steppe migrations has become one of the most important breakthroughs in archaeology and population genetics. It shows that human history is far more dynamic than previously imagined. The Yamnaya migration was more than a movement of people. It was a transformative event that reshaped an entire continent. Their descendants contributed substantially to the ancestry of modern Europeans, influenced emerging cultures, and likely carried languages that evolved into many spoken today. Through ancient DNA, archaeologists and geneticists have uncovered one of humanity's greatest migration stories. The Yamnaya remind us that history is not static. Human populations have always moved, mixed, adapted, and changed. The Europe we know today is the product of thousands of years of migration, interaction, and cultural exchange. The ancient migration that changed Europe forever continues to live on in our languages, our cultures, and even in our DNA.